minutes because she's talking in 3 different capacities. So, welcome.
Thanks. Right, my co-presenter wasn't available, so you do just have me, Kia ora. Yep. So I'm covering the Victoria Neighbourhood Association, shown on that slide. Myself, Marjorie Manthei, and one other member, Shala Hall. There were enough overlaps. Not everybody said all of these things, but there was enough overlap to roll this into one presentation, save you and us time, I should say. And we will just be commenting on the 4 things on that slide. So here's what we support. First one has to do with the cycleways. Members only commented on the ones going to or within the central city, not the specific ones that you had in the draft plan. Sorry about that, but that's what came in. There was the comments made again. I think we did it in the long-term plan as well, to consider ways to simplify wherever possible instead of delaying, and that was for any cycleway. The Climate Resilience Fund, 3 points related to that. We supported it in the long-term plan submission. At that time, we said we hope that you would focus on reducing harmful activities, not just adapting to. In other words, it's much more proactive than waiting for it to happen and then try to adapt. And the third point is that we believe the shuttle is an example of using the fund to reduce emissions. In other words, being proactive. So, the shuttle. Oh no, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead one. There we go. Oh, what happened? Yeah. We always believe in meaningful consultation. In this case, it relates to the item about surplus property, whether to divest yourself. So the comments that came in was, as usual, listen to the ones most affected, not ones that just have an idea that that park over there or that thing over there is something nobody wants. Who knows, unless the most affected people are the ones talked to. And we also wanted to emphasize that residents' voices should be given at least the same weight as businesses or other commercial activities. And we're sorry, but we don't always feel that that is the case. The shuttle also could be known as the loop, hop on, hop off, or as one of our members said, is it like the city centre orbiter? And that was a new person who had no idea what the shuttle was because she didn't live here then. It is V&A on the whole. It is the number 1 priority because the traditional bus service does not meet all the needs, especially for those who live within the city centre and within the 4 avenues and close to the city centre. We believe it is consistent with climate change action. It supports, as it always did, ARA, the city centre, its residents, and visitors and tourists. An important thing to remember, though, is that it has to get people into and out of the city centre, not just going around the points once you get in. And I think sometimes people that hadn't used it have overlooked that very important point. It's not just a shopper's bus, and it always has gone much further and had much more in mind than just retail. More about the shuttle, and now the scoping study. We're really pleased that it's back on the agenda after having been shelved, but we would prefer you just to get on with it rather than a study first, because those of us who lived here when the shuttle was around, can see no reason why it wouldn't be just as successful as it was before, when over 1 million rides were recorded each year, including its first year. With so many new developments now that have no off-street parking and fewer cars, even more people would use it to get into and out of the city centre. Quite a few people, and I've been surprised how many in my own neighborhood, didn't live here pre-earthquake, and they didn't know what the shuttle was, and they had no idea whether they would use it. At a recent V&A meeting, several people said, "How's it different from any other bus?" And other people said, "I never used the bus, so why would I use the shuttle?" So we described it in some detail, and several people then put in a submission or said, please let them know that even though I've never used it, it sounds great. So I'm passing that on to you. However, if you go ahead with a study first, depending on the parameters of that, we just have two requests. The first one is to consult specifically with Central City Residents Associations, who can then consult with their own members, rather than just putting it out for people to respond to, especially now that I know, and you can picture it as well, if you think of all the new developments within the 4 Avs in particular, how many people won't know what to say, won't know whether they would support it, and I doubt if whoever conducted the study would have time to go out and talk to groups themselves, and so that you can get meaningful responses back. You know the old saying, build it and they will come? It seems to us that it's got to be there for people to see how well it works. And the previous iteration of the shuttle, well, in our opinion, proves that. The second point on this, and I suppose this would be for the study as well as if the shuttle gets going, is to be creative. So here are 3 ideas to throw out. First of all, it doesn't have to be free, but it certainly is simpler if it is, because then they don't have to give you a chit. If you're going to 3 or 4 places, you shouldn't have to pay every time if you only had gone a couple of blocks. They don't have to worry about change, but maybe there's a way to do it. Maybe donations, who knows? Maybe you could, well, you can think about it. The second one would be to seek some kind of sponsorships or naming rights to reduce the ongoing costs, and you can come up with all sorts of ideas for that. And the third one is to look into alternatives. Now, this one came from an Icon, one of the other residents' groups. This was their idea, a hybrid version of the Botanic Garden Caterpillar, which they thought would be cheaper, kind of cute, and could whiz around. So there's another idea. What was that? Well, I don't know. Maybe there's fast versions. No idea. But what we're just doing is to say there must be a way to do this. You did it before. You proved that it worked. And I'm really sorry. I have no faith that ECAN would even think about it. It's not in their annual plan. When we went and talked about it in the long-term plan, it was just a bunch of yawns, and they are the ones that very quietly took away the agreement that you and ECAN had in September 2022. Message from the other person that is sitting here in spirit. So this younger member lives on Salisbury Street. She made a very short submission, and it was only to support the shuttle because she ended up saying, wow, I want that. She would love to use it instead of driving into the city. She wanted to emphasize the importance for both younger and older residents. In her submission, she talked about older. One little thing about it being that our neighborhood had old people like me in it, and she thought that we might need it. But she said just as much for younger people and anyone with limited mobility, of which obviously there would be a significant number as one does get older. So the final point on that is what I've already alluded to, the number of residents living near the city centre who didn't know about the shuttle. But even those who did, once it was no longer there, and after the earthquakes when we couldn't go into the city centre, they got in the habit of going elsewhere. And I am surprised how many of my own neighbours go to Edgware. They go to a different library instead of the wonderful Tauranga. They even go to malls because they say access is easier, and a number of them feel that they can't walk from, say, Peacock, Believ area into Tauranga carrying books and carrying books back. And they say, I just can't do that. So you say, get a backpack. I mean, you say all sorts of things. But once you're in the habit of not doing it, and they got in the habit, or they drive into the city, which I think is also something that all of us would want to reduce as much as we can. I don't think the Business Association realizes how many more customers they could have and how many are going in a different direction. It's anecdotal, but we know our neighborhood well, and ICON says the same thing. That's a combination of Shala and things that our own neighbors have said. Sorry, that was her. You've seen it. This is just an additional message that several people said, oh, goody. So we've added that. And that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you. That's great. Aaron, please.
Yeah, thanks for your submissions there, Marjorie. One thing that Yanni's been bleating on, I just saw his, because bleating's the word of the year, bleating on about is having, instead of the shuttle, using the current bus system, but if you're within the 4 Abs, it's a free to use, just with the tap on, tap off, so you're not going out of the zone. Other cities around the world do it. Would that work, or is that something you guys have canvassed? Because that covers quite a lot of routes.
One of the problems I see, and because I'm not quite sure how it would work, it seems to me like it is still just focusing on once you're in the central city and whipping around in whatever you decide, whatever anybody decides, are the main stops, the main places to go. The importance is getting people who live close, and you could say the 4 avenues, but you might want to go a little bit further south. But anyway, close. It's getting them in as well. It's not just once you're in, being able to whip around. And I'm just not positive how what you're describing would work. If it did do that as well and brought people in and then went around, well, that's the shuttle. So...
Okay, so I've got 2 more questions, and I've come forward so far.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for your submission. And I know this, as I used to be the councillor for the area. I used to live in the inner city. I used to chair one of the residents groups, so I know, and I used to use the yellow shuttle, so I know how special the yellow shuttle was to people. But when I look at the map and I see that there are ECAN buses that currently service the area, I do wonder how we prioritise. We've got if I guess I'm just trying to understand from a prioritisation point of view, given that we've got limited resources. What would I say to the people in Aranui and Bromley who have lost bus services, don't have bus services, compared to like a extra service in the central city where there are current bus routes, although recognising that there's a few gaps, but generally the map is pretty good. So people would be able, with the new ticketing system, hop on, and then they have to ticket when they get off. So it would actually be able to be done quite easily. I'm just wondering where you think in terms of our priorities, looking at existing areas that don't have any bus services or very, very limited versus putting...
Yanni, you're gobbling up time. Ask the question.
I guess I would say that's ECAN's. The regular buses is ECAN.
Yep.
We're talking about something that, and I did write these down as well, we're talking about something that fits in with so many of your policies. It fits in with climate change and emissions reduction, reducing congestion in the central city, more people living in the central city and the intensification going on, having a vibrant city centre, residents and businesses not having to have off-street parking or and hopefully having fewer cars and more mixed-use zones. I see them as different. I understand your point, Yanni, but the current buses don't. Where I live, to get to some of the places the shuttle used to go, I would have to take 2 buses. I have to go into the exchange to then get a bus just to go 3 more blocks. So it's silly. I can't get to a supermarket without doing that.
Thank you,
That's
Marjorie.
the
That's
point.
great.
They're different.
Andre, I'm gonna have to
Thank you.
squash your section quickly. Yeah, thanks, man. Radio, Dominic, please.